Hi guys, it is Drea from Dreamy Geckos, and I'm sorry, no makeup. I'm getting ready for bed, and I thought I'd make a quick video of an update for you when it comes to my geckos. As I told you before, I am not going to be breeding Calamity Jane until she gains more weight. I want her to be at least 65 grams, and I said if she reaches that before the end of the season, I might do a late season breeding if she's of weight. Otherwise, I might wait till next season. Just for her health. She has to gain at least 10 more grams. Unfortunately, she's taken a step backwards and she's actually weighing less now. I think depending on how she sits on the scale, she's either about 50 grams or 51 grams. That means she's 1 gram or 1.5 grams down. And that's not completely unusual because she is ovulating. She's sexually mature. When they're sexually mature, they do start to ovulate. And I think, no, she's very wriggly, and I have a really, really hard time getting her to sit still for me to actually look. But the last time I checked her earlier today, it does look like she might be forming eggs. And no, she has not been bred, as I said, but it is not uncommon for a female gecko or a female reptile of any kind, to be perfectly honest, to develop eggs and either reabsorb them into their bodies before, you know, they get fully formed and then have to be laid, or they'll lay blanks, which just means they're unfertilized eggs that you can basically throw away. The worst case scenario would be for her to completely form the eggs and then lay them, because that kind of goes along the same line of if she was pregnant and was developing eggs and lays the eggs, she's going to be taking a lot of resources from her body in order to form the eggs and then lay the eggs, and that could cause a lot of weight loss and a lot of things that I want to avoid, and that was the whole point of not breeding her, because I want to avoid those issues. So my fingers are crossed, because I am hoping she is going to want to reabsorb those and bring that back into her body, which would be the best case scenario and is usually the most likely scenario. I've raised iguanas, and I have another female gecko, Cecilia, and I've never had any one of my iguanas or geckos ever lay blanks. Usually they will reabsorb them. So I'm hoping that this isn't going to be a new experience for me. I'm hoping she's, you know, going to do the same if she really is forming eggs again. I have to double check. But that's what it's looking like at the moment. And she's off food. And that's common, whether they're ovulating or whether they're gravid. They just tend to go off food during this time of the season. I'm not overly concerned, mostly because she had a good shed about 5 days ago, maybe not even 5 days. Yeah, about 5 days ago. She had a really good shed, and it was perfect. I didn't even have to, you know, give her a sauna to get any excess shed off. So we're good that way. And she did have a worm right after she shed the next day, just one worm, but she hasn't eaten since then. Now, even though I'm not overly concerned that she's not eating per se, just because of the fact that, you know, geckos can go off food for a while, I do want her to start gaining weight, not losing weight. So I'm trying to entice her to eat at least a worm or two. Like, even if she does 1 or 2 every couple days, it would make me happy. But like I said, I'm not at the point where I want to force feed her. She's not near that. I mean, geckos can go off food for a week at her age and her weight without it being an issue. But what I would like to do is try to get her to eat a little bit, because one, if she is developing eggs, then we're going to want to make sure that she is keeping a healthy weight. We want to make sure she's getting calcium and that she's getting vitamins, and so the only way for her to do that is to ingest food, obviously. So what I tried doing, of course, is I fed her favorite worms, super worms, mealworms, nothing. I tried to, and this isn't a fun part, but sometimes it's necessary when they're going off food, is to cut the worm open and to kind of dab the guts on their mouth, and then they'll lick the guts, and that kind of triggers a hunger response, and then they start to eat the worm. It's never really failed me, except in situations like this where they're off food because they're ovulating, or they're gravid for some reason, like, if they're developing blanks that they're going to lay or reabsorb, and they just don't want to eat. But otherwise, it usually works. I know a lot of people will recommend waxworms. And I kind of want to say, my hair is so fly away after I washed it. I kind of want to say, like, right now, when you use waxworms, be extremely careful, because waxworms they're the Big Macs of the worm world, okay? They're very unhealthy. They're very fatty. They should be kept as an extremely rare treat. They can be very addictive for geckos, and then they will reject all other food because they want the waxworms. I haven't even given waxworms as a treat to my geckos. I find that in a situation where they're off food, for me, it works better to rub the guts on their mouth, and then they lick the guts, and it triggers a hunger response sometimes. And I find that works better than the waxworms. I've also tried because I have a few hornworms left, and because hornworms are her absolute favorite, and it's just not happening. And this happened with Cecilia. When Cecilia was the exact same age, around the exact same weight, the exact same time of year, she was ovulating, and it looked like she was starting to develop eggs. Luckily, she reabsorbed them, but she went off food too, and she started to lose a little weight, and I could not get her to actually eat anything, no matter what I did. I couldn't get her to lick the guts. I couldn't get her to eat her favorite worms. I tried literally everything short of force feeding her. And then I had a theory that I'm like, well, the one thing I haven't tried is the one thing I really don't like feeding my geckos is crickets. Now, I don't like feeding geckos crickets because 9 out of 10 times it's fine, especially if you get the crickets from a trusted insect breeder, somebody who, solely breeds insects as feeders for reptiles. But they do have a slightly higher propensity to have parasites. And so I try to avoid crickets because even if it's 9 out of 10 times they're fine, it's just not worth the risk for me. But it was the only thing with Cecilia that I didn't try. So I got some crickets. I just absolutely just powdered. They looked pure white because I powdered them up with calcium and some vitamin powder. And sure enough, their hopping motion triggered a desire to hunt them, and she just went nuts and just started eating them all up. And it was the first time that she had eaten anything. In fact, that same day she rejected worms. And it was just something about the motion that drove her crazy, and she started to want to hunt them and eat them after she caught them. So I'm gonna go tomorrow. I'm gonna try to get some crickets, and I'm gonna see if that triggers some kind of a response from Calamity to get her to eat. Again, I'm not concerned. She's gonna eat, she's not gonna eat. She's not at that point right now where it's necessary, because again, she had a really good shed and she ate all of her shed, which is very healthy for them. They eat their skin after they, shed, because it contains nutrients for them. So she did get it that way. She's still pooping normal. It's small poop because, she's not intaking much food, but it's normal poop, what she does poop. And she did eat one worm the day after she shed. So I'm not really that concerned, but I would like to ideally get her to eat as much as possible just to maintain her weight, get her those vitamins and that calcium into her, just so that if for whatever reason she happens to be the one weird reptile that I actually get who doesn't reabsorb her eggs and lays blanks, then she will be physically prepared to do that, because she will have enough nutrients in her. Although I don't think it's going to be a problem, because usually, almost always, a gecko will reabsorb the eggs rather than lay the blanks. But that's not outside of the realm of possibilities. It's never happened to me personally with any of my reptiles, whether it's an iguana or a gecko, but it can happen, and I got to be prepared for that to happen. So I'd like to get her to eat, even though it's not an emergency, not a take her to the vet emergency, because, she's healthy in every other way. It's not a force feed her emergency. It's not where I'm like panicking, but I would like to get her to eat, so I am going to try crickets to entice her, and hopefully maybe what'll end up happening is it will ignite the desire to hunt and chase them down because of all the hopping, and that she will eat them that way. I don't know. She's never actually been exposed to crickets with me. I don't know about her breeder, if her breeder ever gave her crickets. So this might be a completely new experience for her altogether, and that actually might work in my favor. Okay, just a quick update. I reweighed her, and she actually didn't lose as much as I thought she lost. Once I got her positioned nicely on the scale, and I actually got her sitting still, which is very hard for her, it turns out that she weighs 51 grams. Now this scale only weighs in grams. It doesn't show you micrograms, like if she weighs 51.5 or 51.6. So it just says like 51, 52, 53. So she could actually weigh more than 51 grams by several micrograms. It could be like 51.2, 51.4. I mean, who knows? So she lost at least a gram, but it might even be less than that. So that is absolutely not a concern, because during this time of the year when they're not ruminating, when they're ovulating or when they're gravid, they do tend to lose just a little bit. Her tail thickness is still the same. She did have a little tiny poop, very little, but it was normal consistency, normal color, had a urite, which means that she is definitely passing things, you know, so she's not blocked. She doesn't have any parasites because it's normal. And what's also good is that it means that she still has some nutrients in her body that is creating waste that she's able to expel. So I'm not over concerned there either. And like I said, geckos, usually when they reach adulthood and sexual maturity, can go off food for several days. This has only been day 6. They could go up to a week and even up to 2 weeks. When Cecilia was brumating, she would go 2.5 weeks without eating. Then she would gorge like 1 or 2 days on worms, and then she would go off food again and live off the thickness in her tail. Because again, they store all their fat and all their nutrients and all their vitamins and minerals and calcium in their tails, and sometimes little bubbles in their armpits. When they're a little chunky, they get those like little bubbles in the armpits. We call them gecko boobs. And so, you know, so it's not really a concern even if they go off of food for 2 weeks. When it's a concern is if you notice an extraordinary drop in weight, like 2, 3 ounces, 4 ounces, when their tails are getting thinner, when they're not pooping, or when their poop looks to be a very strange consistency. And that is a trip to the vet. So you want to make sure that before you buy a gecko, please know whether or not there is a reptile specialist near you, because that's when it becomes a concern, and you need to go to a veterinarian in order to figure out what to do next. Test for parasites, test for crypto, look for blockages, things like that. But as of right now with Calamity, it is not a concern, just an annoyance, because the whole purpose of not breeding her right now was because I wanted her to gain weight, which means she has to eat more frequently, and she's not doing it. So that's more of an annoyance than a concern. I did go to try to get crickets, and the suppliers all sold out, of course, but they're going to have them in on Tuesday, and then he's also going to try to get me some Dubai roaches. So I don't know why I keep calling them dubia roaches. I do that every time. They're Dubai roaches, and I call them dubia roaches. But anyway, he's going to try to get some. Now, just so you know, with Dubai roaches, they actually could be illegal in some states. I know Florida, they're illegal. They're not illegal in about, I want to say 48 states. They're not illegal. I think there are 2 states they might be, or 3 states maybe. You'll have to look that up. Before you get Dubai roaches, make sure they're legal in your state. I don't know exactly how many states they're legal in, but I know they're legal in my state, which is good. So he's going to try to get them for his store if he can't, and then I can always get them from Rainbow Mealworms, because they do have Dubai roaches there. That might be a new experience for her that might interest her. So I'm going to try the crickets. I'm going to try Dubai roaches. Right now, she actually has some pupae in there. Now, those are what is between the worm and the beetle state. They go from egg to worm to pupate to beetle, and then around again. The beetle will lay eggs and they'll become worms. And Cecilia loves those. She thinks they're like potato chips for her. They're not as nutritionally valuable as the actual worm, because, you know, they can't gut load for one thing, but she loves them. And they are a new experience for Calamity, and she is showing interest. She's been licking them like crazy and moving them around with her little snout and trying to figure out what they are. So I left a few in there with her. I'm going to see if she eats them. If she does eat them, great. If she doesn't eat them, then I'm going to put them back in my farm, because I do have a mealworm farm, and then when they turn into beetles, there'll be new breeders to lay more eggs and create more mealworms, and that's how I keep my mealworm farm going. So we'll see. But I'm going to try that. Again, she is showing interest. More interest in those than she's showing in the worms. So that's a plus. That's a positive. But right now, I'm not concerned. She's a good weight. Her tail has not lost any thickness. She did still poop. She is getting, obviously, because of the urate, she is getting fluids, so she's not dehydrated. And they can go off food for this long during this time of the year. It's just annoying. You know, when you're really looking forward to breeding and you want them to gain 10 grams or 12 grams and they lose like a couple micrograms, it sucks. It really does. And that's more of, it's not as much of a concern as it is just annoying. But that's the update. I will keep you guys updated. If she eats, then you guys will be the first to know. All you have to go, if you have Facebook, is go to facebook.com/Dreamy Geckos, and that's DREAME, Drea Me Geckos. And you can find the update there, or you can subscribe and follow me on Facebook. So on YouTube. There's so many different, there's YouTube, there's Snapchat, I don't even know. But anyway, this is Drea from Dreamy Geckos. I need a nap because I did not sleep well last night, so I'm going to go take a nap for a little bit. It's a nice weekend to do that because it's rainy, it's gray, it's disgusting and cold outside. It's freezing. It feels like winter again. So I'm going to take a nap, and then I'm going to go and see if she ate those pupae later. And if she does, I'll let you guys know. Until then, this is Drea from Dreamy Geckos. Bye.